Well, hello and welcome to week 8 of the WTRL Zwift Racing League. I'm joined this evening by the whiteboard queen, the Zwift racer, Anna Russel. Anna, we've got some pretty big battles at the top of the leaderboard, so tonight should be actually quite critical in the overall.
Yeah, it sure is. There's a lot going on in both the men's and the women's field across all the categories. So I don't know about the top. I know with Relentless and ZWC, they're definitely battling out on the men's, but I think third and fourth in the women's is where it's at tonight.
Well, let's take a look at the overall tables to start with so we can get a bit of an idea of what's going on at the top of these tables. All right, with the women's A division, we've got the AHDRL Ace of Cakes at the top. Gee, they've been impressive through all of these weeks. 137 points, 5 points ahead of the Aero Flyers, so they are still definitely a hot battle for the win there. Z-Sun, they are on 124 points in third, but this is quite a battle developing here too with the BRT Devil Kittens on 124 points, and the Bombshells are back on 103. So a tight battle for first, a tight battle for third. The Fluffy Buns on 97, BRT Hellfire Kittens on 90 points, Cryogen Valletta on 53 points there, and Empower, well, they're yet to turn up to the start line yet, but maybe week 8 or 9, Anna. Let's see if we can get them motivated. So pretty tight at the top of the table there. I'll throw to you for the Division C.
Yeah, now this is where it gets pretty exciting. You can see AHDRL, We Ate the Cake, and TBR Smile on equal on points. I have not seen that yet in one of the leagues, so this is very exciting. TBR Smile on had a fantastic team time trial 2 weeks ago. Let's see what they've got tonight. BRT Fiery Kittens in third, AHDRL Caffeines in fourth, then the Comets and the Spin Mafia in fifth and sixth, the Cruzettes in seventh, Evo Flux in eighth, CMA Queen Bee in ninth, and the Herd of Echidnas rounding out in 10th place.
Gee, some of these names are crackers. All right, let's take a look at the men in the Division A. Team ZWC Attack on 136 points, only 3 points ahead of Relentless, so quite a tight battle there, but not too far back on 127 points. We've got Deepak, the Evo Savages on 101 points, and the Aero Masters on 100 points. Wes number 2 on 99 points. Okay, again, another tight battle there. Team ZWC Blast on 94, WTRL Pioneers 10 points adrift on 84 in 8th place. In 9th, TBR 54T on 68 points. And in 10th place, Phoenix Cyclone Collective on 67 points. So some tight racing equally there in the Div A. The Div B, Anna?
Yeah, TBR 50T leading that out at the moment, only 2 points ahead of Aero Force, so there'll be a big battle between those two teams tonight. Evo Barbarians in third and Cryogen Etna in fourth. But behind them was AHDR Blowflies, then Vision APAC, only a couple of points, and shared for 6th, 7th with the Dirty Sprockets. ZHQ Ravens on 87, Z Sundries 77 points, and in 10th place, Velo Club Melo Sabel, presented by Cycling Tips. It's quite a mouthful.
Yeah, I love it when the teams have so many names. It makes it hard for the commentators. All right, let's look at the Div C. On the top of the table, the AHDR Chances on 134 points, TBR 46T. I assume that these are talking about chainring teeth, and as we go down the leagues, they get smaller. So 46T. The big ring, I think it is. Goodness me.
There we go.
Taking me to the week 8 catch up. Okay, they're on 131 points. TT1 Carbos on 122 points in third. In fourth, AHDR Choppers, 114 points. In fifth, Cryogen LT'd on 113 points. So still quite tight at the top of this table as well. In sixth, MRRC on 109 points. The Big Ring, 47 tooth. There you go. I've nailed it on week 8
Good
on
job.
90 points. But look at this. Quite a race for 7th and 8th here. Cryogen Alto de Latras on 90 points as well. AHDR Chargers on 80 points, and Cryogen Mount Hotham, good Aussie mountain there, on 63 points in 10th spot. So, Anna, we're headed around the Watopia waistband tonight. Generally, we would think it's not too challenging. It's a fairly flat course. But there are a few bumps out there, and they really could cause a split if the teams aren't quite diligent.
I think actually there are the bumps, but I think what's going to catch out a few teams is the little section of dirt that sort of comes around maybe halfway, sort of two-thirds into the race, and you lose vision of the riders ahead of you, and you also slow down a bit and have to put in a bit more power to be able to stay with the group. So I think that's where we might see a few little splits and a bit of teams come into strife. Maybe where we see some teams drop some riders as well.
Well, especially in the men's, the last couple of teams' time trials we've had. So remembering that alternate weeks have been points races to team time trials, the top of the table has actually been incredibly tight, like within a second for the win, within a couple of seconds for the top three or the top four. So all of those little things can make a big difference. In the women's, well, the Ace of Cakes, they've kind of shown week in, week out that even if their lead and domination fluctuates, that they're really the ones to beat, aren't they?
Yeah, and I've got to say that their lead now, with only 3 races, including tonight, is almost unassailable. 137 points, 5 points ahead of Aero, unless they have a massive blowout and sort of finish beyond the top 10. I think they're looking in pretty good shape, but it's where we've really got to watch the third and fourth battle between Z, Sun, and BRT tonight. So they're only 2 points different. So if BRT can overtake Z, Sun tonight, they'll have a good chance of taking out the series. So that's sort of my battle to watch in the women's division tonight. Also had the team manager of Aero email me earlier in the week, so I've got some great bios of all their riders heading out on the time trial course tonight. So we'll send out those interesting facts as we make our way through the course.
Oh, that's fabulous. And I do encourage anybody who is listening to send in any bios to us if you can, because the more info we know, certainly the more we can talk about, and that makes our job a bit easier, doesn't it, Anna? Not that it's all about us, but it's nice to have an easier job when we can.
Exactly.
All right, we'll
if anyone caught the
on course soon. Sorry.
If anyone caught the Relentless interview as well, we looked at a bit of a sort of the men behind the avatars, so we can talk a little bit about how they've been preparing for this series and how important it is for them to win this league and get that step up into the Prems.
So that is absolutely on the line. So for Prem Division, they only had 8 rounds of racing, so they are all done and dusted now. But for the community leagues, we have 10. Now, there is that carrot out there, isn't there, for the top teams, that they will have a face-off amongst the winners across the different community leagues. But we will get a couple of teams stepping up to the Premier League. It's quite a lot of pressure, actually, because I think a lot of these teams have put an awful lot into preparing and getting ready, ultimately hoping that in the next league that we hope starts around the middle of January, that they'll actually be in that Premier League.
Yeah, exactly. And if you keep your eye on the Facebook page, which I tend to a little bit, it gets a bit heated. People aren't seeing this as fun anymore. This is serious professional business. So the community league is definitely spicing up.
Well, we've seen it in a couple of weeks, Anna. We've had talk of people poaching riders. Last week, that was happening on the Facebook group. In other weeks past, we've seen a bit of fisticuffs happen within the pulling turns and the bunches. And of course, the delightful thing about Zwift is that we get to see all of those conversations. Whereas when it's on television and it's an IRL race, we're left wondering as commentators, what did they say? And we're kind of pontificating about what maybe they said. But when they're typing it, they kind of give themselves away, don't they?
Oh, they sure do. Yeah, it makes it definitely very interesting watching these guys out there racing.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's get down to the action. The women are out on course. It's a 25.5 kilometre course, but they do have a 2.5k lead in. So all up around 28k. It's probably the flattest 30k we have in the entire Zwift world, I would say. But in saying that, the 1 or 2% little kick-ups and the gravel throw a little bit of excitement in there. We've got time checks at the 8:16 and then the finish line there. So we'll get a bit of an idea of how they're going out on course. And they also start a minute apart, Anna, and in reverse order. So the Ace of Cakes will head off last. So if we look at the screen, it's actually the bottom of that list are our leaders in the overall division.
What do you think about this, Katie? I am from a triathlon background. The visor on the bike. You can see there their fourth rider there rocking I think it's the Tri Academy 2019 visor. Goer or not on the bike? I mean, do
Yeah,
you see that in real life?
yeah, I'm not sure about the old visor actually. It's been funny. I've found that some of the most conservative people I know who are in the Zwift world don't wear helmets while they ride, and I feel like it's their one moment to be like, throw caution to the wind and ride without a helmet when, there's really no consequence to that at all. But the visors, maybe that's a bit of an in between. I don't know. Maybe an aero consideration.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I rock the little sweatband in game because I'm one of those people who like the idea of not having to wear a helmet in game. But yeah, you can just see a nice little close up of that visor with some cornrows. So Hargraves here is just going with a bit of a different style, I'd say, for a team time trial. Like, usually you see those aero helmets out on the road, but yeah, visor and another sweatband there. So go cryogen,
Do you
have a
remember
little bit
that
of a point of
show?
difference.
Do you remember that show, Pimp My Ride? I feel like Zwift is, a constant
And look at
effort
those
to get
glasses.
more sweat
Oh
drop.
no.
Exactly. To pimp the avatars and pimp the bikes.
Oh.
Let's talk about bikes for a minute. So we've got our front two riders here from Cryogen on Tron bikes. It's kind of generally accepted that if you're not too technically minded and you don't really know which bike to pick and you're not into Googling it because, Google will yield a whole heap of results and hot tips for you, that the Tron bike is the way to go. But if you had any option tonight, Anna, what bike would you go for?
Okay, I'm going to give out one of my little top tips. Don't ride a Tron in a team time trial. Reason being, your avatar, and if you watch there, will never sit up when they're in the draft. So when they're in the Tron bike, they just have one position and they never sit up. So when you're in the team time trial, you really want to know when you're in the draft. And yes, you can, if it says, move within that 5 meters. But if you're in that 5 meters, you can't actually tell. So it's always a little bit of a tricky one using that Tron bike in this kind of a situation. So I like the setup that the Hargraves have got here with the visor is that deep dish wheel on the back. The Specialized Venge S-Works looks like the sort of Zip super fly wheel, not quite the best one you can get. I think you have to be around level 42 for that. The third rider bag is on the Canyon Aero Road, so not the slipperiest of frames. It used to be, but it actually got downgraded a bit. So I think, we see with Hargraves, that would be the bike I'd be choosing for the TTT tonight. Aero helmet, if anyone who's watching can give a bit of advice here. I've seen a lot of the Prem teams using the aero helmets. Do they actually offer that much of an advantage in game? I'm not sure. Sometimes you lose a little bit of style with it, but we'll see if anyone can respond as to whether they offer a bit of benefit.
Well, we've got a saying in Australia, Anna, all the gear but no idea. You don't want to be that person.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to have the flashy Tron bike if that's not the way to go. In saying that, we know that it's a good one. Well, g'day, World Elite Zwifters. Nice to have a little bit of chat. It's good to have some regulars, Anna. I feel like we're building a bit of our own community here in the old viewing section rather than the riding section. They've got their community, now it's our team. Hey, they're going to be a great TTT tonight. Go AHDR team. So AHDR, Anna, is a Australian Hump Day ride. Just fill me in here. Do New Zealanders know what a Hump Day ride is?
I mean, it has, two meanings, but I'll go with the more well-known one, which is a Wednesday ride.
Let's keep it clean. We might be on YouTube, but
it's early on,
so let's for now.
The Wednesday night. So I'm thinking it's just an Australian New Zealand thing. It's called the Hump Day. You're sort of halfway through the week. You've made it through Monday, Tuesday, but you still got Thursday, Friday. You're sort of on the hump. Is that the what you know of it, Katie?
That is. It is. And the AHDR crew, the L is for ladies in this context, are the biggest Australian ride and Australian community by a long shot. They do an amazing job corralling newbies into Zwift and into Zwift racing. So we're very grateful for all the work they do in the Zwift community.
So I'm just looking at this Cryogen team. Yeah, and I'm just looking at their speed. I do know that probably the sweet spot we're looking at with the women's racing tonight is between around 42 to 43k an hour. So just riding here around 37 to 38. I'm not sure they're putting in, a top end performance for this division. And they've only got 4 riders, so you can ride with 6. You can drop 2 and just finish with 4. But it looks like they may have struggled to get a full team. And with this course being so flat, you really want to hold on to those 6 riders as close to the end as possible. Maybe drop one around Volcano. That's about 7k to the end. But yeah, you really want to be, not down to 4 at this early stage. You're only 8 kilometers in.
I mean, for the most part, they've looked fairly neat. So one of the keys, certainly, to riding a team's time trial in real life, same goes in Zwift, is making sure that when you swing off, you don't accelerate and then just stop pedaling, because you'll very quickly fall out of that draft and end up having to chase. I must say Cryogen is really doing a very good job of maintaining quite nice form amongst the 4 of them. Sometimes, though, that does mean that they're not all at their absolute limit. And judging by heart rates, we're looking at Krellin here at 153 heart rate. It is a real skill, and this is something triathletes do pretty well. It's a real skill to be able to hold a high heart rate and go all day. But what I would say to these riders is they've only got 28k. I mean, 25 and a half if you take away that lead in. And so actually they can afford to really push the limits a bit and get that heart rate a little bit higher. I know it can be a bit intimidating, and some of the riders are thinking, I can't maintain that. But it is actually incredible, the difference between being on the front versus sitting in the draft, getting a little bit of recovery and being able to really lift that speed up as a result. So we've headed over to the AHDRL fluffy buns here. They've been getting better every week, I've got to say, and they're looking pretty neat. But again, there's only 4 of these ladies. So as you were saying, Anna, it's not quite as advantageous as having 6 out there.
Yeah, exactly. On your points about the sort of turns at the front, I did notice that Cryogen team were taking very long turns at the front. I actually was on a run with a sports physiologist over the weekend and decided to pick his brains about team time trialing and the best use of your different energy systems. So he actually said that the shorter the turn, and we tried to think whether this would work in Zwift or if it's just a sort of real life thing. The shorter the turn, maybe around 8 to 10 seconds, you might not get into your anaerobic sort of lactate system. So I don't want to get too technical here, but that means that you can probably go for a bit longer without a huge amount of fatigue at the end. So what you do tend to see is when the times are getting slower, people are taking long turns at the start, 45 seconds, a minute even, holding that long power, then they go through, and the further on they go, just the more lactate and fatigue builds up in the legs. And then at the end, they're taking like desperation turns, is what I call it, sort of like they're on the front and then they're dying within 5 seconds and they're like, I'm off. And that's when that momentum shifts and they can't really keep those high paces. So I did watch a bit of the Prem division earlier today, and I noticed the turns were probably more around that, I would say 15 to 25 seconds. So yeah, again, if you're racing this week, I'd sort of advise take a bit of a chance if you can take shorter turns but push those watts higher and make that speed go a bit higher as well.
And that's a really good point, Anna, because all of the riders do have the opportunity through these leagues, particularly the teams who aren't worried about making absolutely every second count because they're looking to upgrade to Prem League, or, conversely, teams like Ace of Cakes who are fairly confident that they can. This is an opportunity to grow and build for the coming seasons. So to unpack what you said just a little bit, anaerobic is what sprinters do, and aerobic, if you're an anaerobic athlete, you kind of like the shorter, sharper, punchier stuff, and the aerobic athletes tend to be, for example, Ironman triathletes, Tour de France riders. Someone like Peter Sagan or Anna van der Breggen would be a combination of being very efficient both in an anaerobic and an aerobic capacity. What we're talking about when we're talking about quite short turns is really not tipping over into that red zone, right? Really not making any effort that you can't recover from, because that is the absolute death knell when you are in a team's time trial. When you do one effort that's just a little bit too long, and so when you go back and sit on the back and recover, you're not actually able to recover from the effort you've done. It needs to be really calculated, and it really does depend on the heart rate you're at, but you can definitely push into much higher heart rates if you allow yourself a bit more recovery. So let's take a look at the bombshells. And looks like we've got a bit of an overtake about to happen here. Anna, there's a bit of
Yeah,
etiquette
this
about
is
teams
yeah.
time trial overtake, isn't there?
There is. It's if you're the passing team, it's actually very similar to in a long distance triathlon race where you have a draft zone. So this team behind, which I think is the AHDR bombshells, looks like they're going to come past. Well, looks like they're going to be passed by BRT. So BRT needs to come through at pace, and the AHDRL bombshells need to just drop pace. So they actually need to go slower essentially than what they've been going just to get off their draft, because what you don't want is a massive huge melee of 12 riders kind of all confused together. Doesn't help either that BRT and HDRL have purple kits, and so it does start to get a bit confusing. We've had that situation ourselves, and this is where you might start to see a little bit of the chit chat if people get frustrated and a few little comments saying get off my wheel, although these ladies are all pretty friendly, so I don't think we'll see too much of that. But we're seeing Ma here from BRT, and just to remind those watching, we have a good battle on tonight between BRT and Z Sun. So if BRT can overtake Z Sun tonight, although it looks like Z Sun is only 45 seconds behind them, they could move ahead over the next 3 races. But let's have a look here at what happens on this overtake.
Well, Doris Ma is a little bit of a hitter. She's an Aussie who is certainly incredibly impressive out on the road and doing triathlons. She's made a good transition into the Zwift world. This is messy, though. I've got to say, normally you would see the team being overtaken hang over to the right-hand side of the road. I nearly said left, being an Aussie, but they're hanging over to the right there. And the other team quite cleanly overtake. We didn't quite see that. I am glad that nobody piped up in the chat and had a go, because I do genuinely think, Anna, that all of the teams are doing the best that they can. They are trying to respect the other riders, and I know that they all have a lot of respect for each other out there. BRT have been getting better and better every week. The rider that I every single week notice getting better is Ange McRae, and she's out there again. She, on her own in the points races, has been really shining, and I think that week on week her strategy has getting better as well as her form. I think she'll be a real team leader for BRT out there at the moment, and they will be relying a bit on Ange to set the pace, to make sure everybody is playing nice. So, Anna, you're out there racing. You'll be out there racing tomorrow. Do you communicate via Discord? I mean, how do you make sure each rider can hear the instructions and take note? Because strategy changes out on course.
Yeah, I mean, I found the biggest thing with the team time trial is you're just so at the limit that sometimes you have great little strategies before the race, and then all kind of you forget about it because your heart rate's so high. I mean, I remember last week that climb coming in the Petit Boucle course. It was brutal, and my heart rate was up around 178 as my dad decided to come down and ask me about whether my son could have a cookie or not. Now, I barely saw him. He was just a sort of big fuzz in the background. So that's sort of what happens when these guys are out here. It seems simple when we're sitting here talking, but when your heart rate is up in that 160, 170 zone, it is hard. As we see Hose here getting dropped off a bit. Do you know what? I actually saw Hose getting caught up with the AHDRL bombshells behind, and I think she just hasn't been able to catch back on. So she's 4 seconds back now. I think they'll just let her go, and she'll finish off the race solo, which is always a bit of a sad place to be in a team time trial. But what we do is you just have really simple calls. So I don't know what happens in the real world, Katie. Maybe you can enlighten me. But in Zwift, sort of real simple calls. You take your turn, and then when you're about to come off your turn, you just give a 5-second call, often 5, and then the next rider can build up their power, build up the momentum, and so there's not sort of a slowdown after that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too dissimilar in the real world. I think it's really about clarity of communication and signals. I mean, one big thing was we never said yes or no. We always said go or stop. Because no and go can easily get confused, so that you don't want that to happen. So go and stop were the very clear signals that you used in terms of if a rider was starting to get dropped, to make sure you manage that. But sometimes riders will get dropped, and some of the teams will have a little bit of a disparity in talent in terms of where they're at on their Zwift journey. So I think a lot of the riders have been in there for a while. A lot of the riders are newer and building up. And so each week they may be getting stronger. Ange McRae is actually the perfect example of that. At the beginning of this community series, we were like, oh, yeah, she's a mid-pack kind of rider. She's pretty strong. But she's now emerging as one of the riders who causes the most attacks and causes the most damage. And so if we break that down into each rider within each team, you can imagine kind of the individual journeys that the riders are on and the need for each week them to recheck. They can't kind of set the strategy in week 1 and assume that by week 8 now that everything will be the same. And I think that's something to really consider. If we just have a look at the fluffy buns here, they're going through the gravel section on the course near the Italian villas. Now, Anna, this can cause a bit of havoc because you actually lose visibility when you're following your teammate's wheel, don't you, when you go through that gravel section because of all the dust that gets thrown up.
Yeah, not only that, but you also sort of have to put out a bit more effort because sort of the game makes you think you're riding on uneven terrain, so you have to put out a little bit more power to keep the same speed. And that just, as you can see here, it kind of just jostles the riders around a little bit. It can get a bit confusing, and then if it gets a bit confusing and sort of one rider drops off the back, they might not actually be able to see you. And I saw in the earlier races today that this area is definitely a place that teams became unstuck. But looking up BRT, they've got a beautiful sort of formation coming through there. So you can just see now that we're sort of coming to the pointy end of this league, this team time trial, teams have worked on it. They've been out there practicing. They're getting into that single file formation. Everything's looking neat and tidy. I remember we commentated one of the first team time trials and, it looked pretty messy and you're kind of wondering what people are doing. But these guys are now, they're becoming friends, they're teammates, they trust each other and they know each other's strengths and weaknesses, exactly to your point, Katie. And that's where it becomes tricky in these races, is that you could have a rider who's just got, like a McRae, say, really good threshold power. And you might have another rider who's really light, not such good threshold power, good on those kind of hill climbing courses, but not so great on a team time trial. So that's where you've got to look at, who's taking turns where, how long are the turns, and how you can work best together as a team.
And I know that a lot of the riders actually watch and listen to the stream either while it's going on or afterwards. And certainly something I'd say, Anna, is absolutely to your point about knowing each other and the length of turns they take. In a team's time trial, the best strategy is to make sure you treat everybody as individuals trying to get a team outcome. So you don't want to say to all 6 riders, all of us have to do 20-second turns. Because for some of the riders, it might be better to do 30-second turns. For other riders, it may be better to do 5-second turns. And I think that the teams that really hone in on that and spend the time poring over the Zwift power files and all the data and understanding where each rider's strengths are, I think they're the ones that can really shine. Now, can we just talk about these split times for a second, Anna? Because the Aero Flyers, there's a bit of a race on here with the Aero Flyers and Zed Sun, because Ace of Cakes, we've circled them as they are the ones that consistently perform and are getting the points. But at the first intermediate checkpoint, they're nearly 30 seconds back off the Aero Flyers. So I'm going to put this to you. Have the Aero Flyers gone out like the clappers and maybe they can't hold it, trying to make sure they one up the Zed Sun? Or have the Ace of Cakes just thought, we're leading, we can afford to start a little bit conservatively? 30 seconds within that first split, that's actually, quite noticeable considering Ace of Cakes beat the Aero Flyers by a minute overall in the last one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what happened last team time trial was the Aero Flyers for the first time beat the Z Sun, and so I think that gave them a lot of confidence. And I potentially think maybe they're going out here for the all-out win because they haven't, got a huge chance of beating AHDR at the top of the table. I think they're going for just a race win today, and I like their aggression. Their team manager got in touch with me earlier in the week, and I'd like to talk a little bit about Vesna O'Connell, who's racing tonight in this team. So she's actually never ridden a bike before we went into our lockdowns this year. And over lockdown, her husband bought her a bike, set her up on Zwift. So that was back in, say, July. And she's been taking it to it like a duck to water. She's got 4 young children
Stop
as
it.
well. So
Wow.
absolutely phenomenal. So Vesna O'Connell,
What a
hats off
story
to you.
that
You're
is.
just, what a story. Yeah, I loved that one. It was extremely inspiring. And the fact that she hasn't been on a bike before July this year and she's riding like this is just amazing.
Oh my goodness. Wow. A name to watch for the future. That's really impressive. Vesna O'Connell, she's right at the front of the Aero Flyers. They are absolutely kicking along at the moment. Now, when the teams are going this fast and they are moving along, look at that. There's the overall league standings for reference. They are 5 points adrift of the Ace of Cakes. So any point will really help them in that quest over the next 2 weeks to uh, to beat. And, we saw, Anna, that in the Prem League, no pins made up 5 points on that overall league standing. So while we say perhaps it's an unassailable lead by Ace of Cakes, perhaps it's not. And, the Aero Flyers certainly appear to not be accepting that they are not on the top of the table. They've got 5 riders left here. They're working in a bit of a blobby teams time trial formation. Let's just go through the teams time trial formations for a second. But I'm just going to reference the split times as they come up because we've just been talking about that. So the Aero Flyers, again, are belting along, but let's just wait a little second here because it'll be really interesting where the Ace of Cakes come through in this 16 kilometre split. So again, 28K is that final one. So we've got splits at 8:16 and 22K. Generally, Anna, you want to negatively split. So you want to come home faster than you went out or at least hold. That's generally the best strategy and certainly one that you'd be aiming for rather than to go out like the clappers and kind of mushroom cloud. But what do you think? I mean, we've talked about the way to ride a team's time trial. You've got your whiteboard out. You've figured out all the different strategies. How do you rate what Aero Flyers are doing out there today?
Yeah, they looked really good. I think they've got a lot of riders. If you look back here at the AHDRL Ace of Cakes, they've only got 4. Team Aero had 5, and just before that they had 6. So they've obviously just recently dropped a rider. Like I said, the place you kind of want to drop a rider is around Volcano. You've got about 7 to 8 kilometres to go from there. But because this is such a flat course, as we see Aero here hitting another little bit of a dirt section, so it'll be good to see how well they stick together, kind of blobbing up a little bit. A good strategy on these downhills is just to sort of let it flow, and your heavier riders will go to the front, and then your lighter riders can just draft off them. As you can see here, exactly that's what they're doing. A couple of riders just organically moving to the front while the others come in behind in a pack formation. So I think Aero's done their homework, and they know sort of the best way to ride, not just in a team time trial, but on a course like this, where there are, even though it's mostly flat, some little tricky areas. The part that I wonder about the team time trial, and I haven't been able to sort of get a definitive answer on which is the best strategy, is how do you work your dropped rider strategy? So do you have a light rider just pulling some huge turns for the first quarter and just then they explode and you can just drop them off? We kind of had a strategy like that last week. You can see it with the sprint points where you have a big power rider just burn all their matches on the sprint points and then pretty much just cruise for the rest of the race because they know they can't get up the climb. So I don't know what happens in cycling in this kind of event, but do you burn the legs of those lower power riders and just have them drop, or do you sort of have them in there knowing that the draft will always have some kind of a benefit even if they're not off the front?
It's a good question, and it applies equally in the Zwift world as in real life, I think. is that you definitely, for something like a points race, a scratch race, a normal road race, you would choose an entirely different team than a specialist team's time trial team. So when you're going for a TTT lineup, you're certainly looking for riders who are all of quite similar powers. Without doubt, if you can have 5 riders who are all similar powers, they will go faster than 3 riders with better power and 3 riders with worse power, because you really are only as strong as your weakest link. And I think all of the teams have taken a bit of time to figure out how to use their strongest rider equally as much as how to use their weakest rider, because their strongest rider can do so much damage up these tiny little inclines. And we're heading around the volcano at the moment. There's a few little ticks up here. They're only 1 or 2%, but they can open really big gaps and they can cause a whole lot of damage within a team. So if the tactic is, oh gosh, we've got a rider who can put out enormous power up climbs, let's send her to the front up a climb, that is often very detrimental. So we're looking, again, we just saw an overtake happen there. Hopefully the etiquette is playing out. Cryogen, we're seeing a gap open up, which is exactly what we were just talking about. They need to be really, really conscious of this and make sure that they use that strong climber to their advantage. So this is Zed's son. Here we just saw them do a good overtake. Let's talk about for a second these split times, Anna, because this is something we have not seen yet to date. Ace of Cakes are down in 4th. So they're nearly a minute back at the less than halfway, just over halfway, than Aeroflyers. Last week at the finish, it was in reverse. So we wondered if Aeroflyers had gone out too hard, but it actually looks like they're just on a really good day, and perhaps Ace of Cakes are not kind of acing the cake today.
Something's happening with Ace of Cakes, because that
Sorry,
is,
ladies.
so to speak. They won the last team time trial convincingly, and to see them now sitting in 4th place and so far back, it's not by a few seconds. That is, like you said, over a minute. This could really shake up the table, because if they're going to sit in 4th, Aero Flyers, who are currently sitting in 2nd in the overall placings, take out today, this could boost them right near the top, if not sort of overtaking Aero. They're only 5 points back. So this is a dangerous point of view for Ace of Cakes. I'd be interested to get a visual on them if I can at some point, to see maybe they've dropped, they're down to 4 riders or something, because it seems something has definitely gone wrong in their race plan today. Oh, here we go. Looks like, so they are down to 4 riders. I'm not sure when they dropped the other 2. This has not played out well for them. And we've got Willocks, McKay, Hurst, and McMaster. And I just see McMaster. It's not a familiar name to me. She is dropping off the back here, and it looks like maybe, like, the point you made before, you're only as strong as your weakest rider, and she's pushing pretty hard to get back onto this group, and it might just be that, it's been a little bit too hard, and they're really going to have to rein in that pace to keep all 4 of them together. It's not a position you want to be in. It'd be great if they had another rider there. They could maybe say to McMaster, drop off now, we're at Volcano, you're all good, but they've got to finish with 4.
Well, when they won on the Greatest London flat, which was the last team's time trial they had Dana Davidson, Kelly Murphy, Kath McKay, Kim Hurst, and Tessa Muir. So they've got a bit of a different team out there today. Perhaps with such a lead, they've thought, let's try out a few different riders and let's see what we can do out there. You know what? If that's what they're doing, absolute kudos to them. Equally, we might have a few sick riders. We might have no babysitter for the mums with young bubs. It's almost impossible to do a Zwift race when you have a small human screaming for attention the whole time. So there could be a number of things that have gone on. I think definitely we need to give them the benefit of the doubt that so far they've turned up with every ace possibility that they possibly can. They've got a few challenges today. There are a few gaps opening up. They just need to make sure that they look after each other, because I think we're seeing a few power differentials here that are causing a bit of on again, off again. So gaps are opening up. They're waiting. They're all regrouping. Then they're stringing out again. It doesn't seem to me, Anna, like they're getting in their usual smooth rhythm. It may be as simple as these are 4 riders who we don't normally see ride together. And you cannot understate just how important it is to get to learn and know each rider's performance throughout the ride. It takes a lot of cohesion and absolute kudos to the teams who have improved so much throughout the season for doing that. I'd love any Aero Flyers and any Ace of Cakes. We'd love to hear your different strategies. And Ace of Cakes, we'd love to hear why you've got a different skew of riders out there today.
Yeah, so looking at Ace of Cakes at Lukey McMaster, she is a under 19, under 20 rider, actually. Not new to Zwift, but is actually a category C rider, riding up here with the A group. So I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Katie. I think maybe they're a shorter rider. They've called in Lucy here to represent them in the A category, although she's a C category rider. So she is doing absolutely phenomenally to even be with this group of hard-hitting ladies from the A category. So massive kudos to her. I can't imagine how hard it would be to pull up from a Cat C up into a Cat A. So congratulations, Lucy.
Well, and for the overall, this is important to note, they just have to hang on to fourth today to maintain that overall lead. And so Ace of Cakes, you're doing an absolutely tremendous job out there. They are sitting quite comfortably in fourth ahead of the Fluffy Buns and the Bombshells there. So they've got about a 40-second lead, or that's down. That's actually lengthened. It's breaking out a little bit. They're comfortably in fourth. If they can hold on to that, they still will hold the overall lead. So I think that that is pretty impressive to bring a young rider in and still be in that position. But certainly the race is on between the Aero Flyers and Zed Sun. There's only 4 seconds between it at the 22K mark. Anna, I think this is the tightest race we've seen in the women's so far.
That is amazing. You can see last time we had a little image of Zed Sun. It looked like they had all 6 riders still going around Volcano. So there we go. No, they have dropped someone now. So it's mano a mano, 5 versus 5 for Zed Sun versus the Aero Flyers. That is definitely the battle tonight. And AHDRL, Ace of Cakes, they're going to drop off, not lose their lead, but it's going to make a very, very exciting last couple of races in this APAC Division League, because that unassailable lead I was talking about at the start of the show, look how easily that can change just over one race. You lose a few positions and oh no, actually I am looking at Zed Sun here. They do have 6 riders, so they've been pulling in some pretty good time over the Aero Flies. You can see at the 16K mark they're about 8 seconds back, and then coming into the 22K mark they're only 4 seconds back. So if they can keep this formation going with the 6 riders, I think it could be them on the line.
Well, it's a little bit messy too. I think that with some really small improvements that they can actually pick up a little bit of speed. Their heart rates are pretty high. We're watching Lee here. Heart rate 175. That is absolute threshold heart rate, if not above, which is great because they aren't too far from the finish. This is this is more than the business end of the race, Anna. This is absolutely where it could all count when the time checks are so close. So for Zed Sun, if they were earlier on in the race and there were these gaps opening up, I would say, oh my gosh, you've got to get it together. But at this point, I think it really will make the absolute difference to them if they can push as hard as they possibly can. And it's a bit hold on for survival. If they only finish with 4, then that could be their fastest strategy. So they need to make sure that they ramp it up and leave absolutely nothing out there, because the competition is on the overall standings. They are absolutely neck to neck. Out there, they are neck to neck. The Aero Flyers and Zed Sun are just absolutely throwing the gauntlet down here today. We're seeing some gaps open up, but like I said, they're coming into these closing kilometres. It's the best strategy to just leave nothing left.
Yeah, I think this is where teams sort of make a mistake. You hit sort of 2K, 1,500 metres to go. It just needs to be on Discord, all in, all in, all in. And whoever drops, you can drop 2 riders here, Zed Sun, just go for it now. We can see they've got Schlesinger and as well Danette Shaw, who we know perform extremely well on the scratch races. As we see Danette here move to the front, I think she's just going to start pushing her team and just saying, let's go girls, we've got nothing to lose. We've got to leave it all on the line.
Yeah, it's some really high consistent powers. All of their heart rates are fairly up. But what we want to see is that the power be fairly consistent. So we're watching Carberry at the moment. And we can see top left of screen, the power is a bit all over the shop. That's not her fault. It's simply the draft effect and the way that the team is riding. But ideally at this point in the race, we would just see high power output from all of them, because the draft effect, at this point in real life, Anna, if they're half a metre off each other's wheel because they're all fighting so hard just to keep the wheel, that's kind of a good outcome. And that's exactly what we're seeing now, is that some gaps are opening up, but we don't need to be worried about that. All that means is that they're really starting to push the pace coming into this finish. It is a pretty flat course. They are on a slightly false flat downhill. If you're not careful, your power can really drop on these false flat downhills. So they need to be watching their power and make sure that they can just consistently deliver that as soon as they get out of that slipstream, accelerate and continue to build on that pace.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of say to our team, head down, go nuts. Now's the time to do that. They're coming so close to the finish line. It's just, I guess, get Schlesinger, get Shaw off on the front. Those two just push pace. I think right now they need to drop a couple of riders. They don't really need to be carrying all this to the finish. And I'll tell you that Aero, we know that they've got some good sprinters and they've got some good power. I think they'll be really pushing at the end. And from what I'm seeing here, I don't know. I think it's going to be a close one, but I think Zsun perhaps just isn't pushing as hard as they really need to be coming into these final, you'd almost say meters now. You can see they've ridden just on 27 kilometers. Danette is at the front, riding about 5 watts per kg, just there for a moment. You can see Schlesinger desperately trying to get back on pace, but they really need to push this up to 6.5 there from Carberry. So I think this is it. I think the word's gone out on Discord. Let's go. Stop this. We don't need to stay in a line anymore. We're so close. Just go for it, girls. Let's get this done. Let's win the race.
Yeah, that's it. They are strung out. It's a good skew of riders, I think. All of the riders have been putting in pretty even powers, and that is really the key to the overall success and to going quite fast. This is the closest we've seen to date. They were 4 seconds apart at that 22-kilometre time check. Each one getting faster. So Zsun has really been picking up the momentum and the pace. I think inwardly they can be quite confident with their finishing time that at each intermediate split they've actually come closer and closer to the Aero flyers who did fly out of that pen. So as they come into the finish now, and this is it for Zsun as they go through that arch, and if we look at the top right of screen, we could see that. So they have now gone through that finish. We are now waiting for the Aero flyers. We're looking at Aero on screen at the moment. They're not too far behind. So if we look top right of screen, we can see that finish arch. And let's see, and then we'll get the results up as quickly as we can. But Aero do look like they're belting into the finish. They've only got 5 riders, and they are coming up onto catching a team, which certainly gives them a little bit of a carrot. This is going to be pretty tight.
5.7. She, we talked about her earlier, mum of 4, hasn't been on a bike for longer than 6 months, and she's pushing off the front at 5.7. So phenomenal riding. Love how she looks as well with that orange headband. But I think Aero may have it. I think they finished very, very strong there. We'll have to see those results coming up as we progress through. Watching the Cryogen Ravens here. So they've had 4 riders for, I think, pretty much since the get-go. So good job on them making it through. It's a tough wee course when you've only got 4 there, and it looks like they are struggling a bit. There's not sort of a big sprint to the line like we've seen with some of the others. They're just sort of maintaining power and rolling over for what would have been a hard day in the office.
Yeah, it's certainly very different strategy when you have 4 riders versus 6, because you really can't afford to push it too much because you will see gaps open up. So Ace of Cakes, who sit on the top of the chart, they are still with their 4. What is important is that they finish in the top 4 today. It's also important that they finish with 4 riders at least to make sure that they can cross the line as a group. We can see Hose just off the back there. She's not actually from Ace of Cakes. She's from BRT. So we don't need to worry that they've dropped a rider. They have actually had 4 out on course the whole time. And they've done a pretty good job of holding that together because it's a fairly inexperienced combination. So that always throws a bit of a cat amongst the pigeons. but the more experienced riders, certainly Willix and McKay, have been looking after Hurst and McMaster out there, which is kudos to them. So let's see if the Ace of Cakes can hold on to that top 4, because that's what we need. So we've got so much information on screen. We can see the split times on the bottom left. If we look at the top right, that is where they are on course, and you will be able to see that finish arch ahead of them, even though you can't see that on the main screen. On the top left of screen is the rider's individual power, heart rate, and cadence. 95 cadence is a nice solid cadence from McMaster. So the junior, she's one to watch for the future. She's doing really well. And then if we look to the right of screen below the map, we can see how many watts per kg they're putting out, which gives a bit of an indication of where they're at in terms of effort. So we're looking at Kim Willix here. She's been pretty solid rider over the series, Anna, and she's taken that team through the finish line there. So again, kudos to the Ace of Cakes. We've seen them on the top of the table every week, and sometimes it's not the easiest thing to head out there and not be on the top of the table, but they've done a pretty good job to finish in that top 4. So we're over to the men now. We've got a bit of a tight race here as well, Anna. So for the men, equally as we just saw for the women, it's absolutely not over yet, and there's a bit of a tight race between Relentless and ZWC. And if past teams' time trials are anything to go by, DPAC will also put in a strong showing today.
Yeah, DPAC, ZWC, Relentless. They're sort of the 3 teams to watch. There's a tight race on the top. ZWC just ahead of Relentless, about 3 points ahead, and then DPAC another 6 points behind them. But like we saw in that women's race, all it takes is sort of an off day with one team, and they go from first, and then they can be just 1 point ahead, like we've seen with AHDR, Ace of Cakes. So I know Relentless in the last team time trial beat ZWC by 12 seconds. So that was extremely tight in the top of this men's field in the APAC division. And from having talked to the Relentless crew, they are absolutely motivated. I mean, if anyone didn't know, they're getting up at 3 a.m. to race these races, because that's the time it works. They're all fathers, they've all got kids, and that's the time that it works for them to do their racing. I mean, I couldn't do it. I don't know if I could get up and race at 3 a.m. like they do, but there we go. They're motivated, obviously, and they want to make it to that Prem division.
Well, we've been up with kids at 3 a.m, but it's a slightly different experience, isn't it, to getting on your bike and racing. It is very impressive that Relentless do that. And last time we actually saw Grasicki. Was it the last team's time trial, Anna, that we wondered if he had a mechanical because he was missing in action out there, because that can happen as well. We need to remember that while they can't get flat tires or broken chains, well, I mean, they can get broken chains, but that would be unusual on a trainer. And just quietly, to anyone out there who experiences that, perhaps you need to oil your chain between trainer sessions with all the sweat. But we also think that within the men's division, Anna, it can also happen, men's, women's, that they have kind of technical faults where they might have internet dropouts or some problems with that. So if we do see riders suddenly missing in action, that's often what it is.
And it does look like here like we have a great battle in the women's C division. Like I talked about, BRT, Fiery Kittens, and TBR Smile On, who I do believe are tied at the top of the points. So this is a huge night for them to see who can come out on top. And look how close it is, 8 seconds. TBR had an amazing team time trial a couple of weeks ago. They actually got my Team of the Day award for that one. And they're having a great one here too. There is definitely a battle on between the BRT Fiery Kittens and TBR Smile On. We were just watching We Ate the Cake now. They're about 40 seconds off the pace at the last time check, but still with 6 riders and some good bike setups there, and it looks like they're finishing very strong there with 6 watts a kg from A Reed.
Well, they're actually pretty tight overall. The top 4 are within less than a minute and a half, and that's actually fairly tight based on what we've seen on other weeks. We're seeing an overtake here. Oh, goodness. And, they've just come through the finish. I was like, what are all these
Yeah.
people doing on the side? But that's what's going on for a little bit of context there. Because a lot of the riders, the reason there's so many of them, Anna, is because they cross the finish line and they just double click stop pedaling and their avatars just stop moving. And so that's why they're all there. So we're looking at Joe Lees from the Degenerates. What a great name. The Degenerates out on course. And Div C has a lot of teams that, again, it's not dissimilar to the A, and have been just improving week on week on week and really becoming a lot more cohesive. Their speeds have been improving, and a lot of these teams want to move up divisions as well.
Exactly. I do want to give a little shout out here to Herd, who we can just see on the was on the right hand side of the screen there. They're a team that's prevalent on Zwift, and my 70-year-old father has just started riding for Herd. So I'm loving this team. They're very, very inclusive, and they have some great easygoing rides during the week. My dad went and did his first time up APAC Climb and Radio Tower today, and it was a good 90-minute ride. So thanks, Herd. I'm loving what you're doing for the community.
Oh, that's really cool. I love those stories. As much as we, sort of cheerlead all the parents that are getting on with young kids because we know how challenging that is, I think it's really cool to see retirees jumping on the bike and experiencing everything that we are in the digital world. So we do actually have some women's results in. We'll get them up as quick as we can for the A. The C's are still coming in and they're doing a really good job. They look really neat, Anna. I think that they've been paying a lot of attention to making sure that they are uniform and making sure that they all stay together, because a consideration in these C leagues especially is that there's often a bit of a differential in powers between their top rider and the riders below, and that's something that they need to be really considerate at, because we've already talked about what can happen when the strongest rider causes a bit of havoc. So this is the split times for the C. 8 seconds at the 22K mark between the Fiery Kittens and the TBR Smile On. They're doing such a good job. I mean, massive kudos, Anna, to these teams who have turned up week in and week out and improved absolutely out of sight. And I also want massive kudos to AHDRL as a group and a community, because they've got 5 different teams in this league. They might be getting a little bit frustrated though, because they're sitting 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, but maybe not 1st or 2nd. So good on them, and hopefully in the next coming weeks they can certainly keep building and improving on that. But again, awesome job that they're doing for the community. The Fiery Kittens on top, TBR Smile On. Let's head back to the men and see what's going on over there. There is a very tight race folding out between Relentless DPAC there in the men's, as well as Team ZWC Attack. But race 3R we're looking at the moment. This is a bit of danger time, Anna. A few gaps opening up, and they're only at the 18.3 kilometre mark. It's a bit too early to have these gaps, and it suggests that Milburn needs to temper that power a little bit and make sure that he can let his teammates catch back up, because some real fatigue can build when you are not on that wheel. The draft effect, it's around 35% when you're in the draft, but when you're not in the draft, you can really feel like you're just getting spat out the back.
Yeah, I think that was not a great move there from Chidley coming over the top. So you saw there was a gap between Milburn and Vale, and then Chidley came over the top at 6 watts a kg and just made the gap more. So maybe not so much of a cohesive unit. It kind of, if anyone knows about this team, let me know on the socials. But I think what it looks like is a newish team working together, and you're sort of out there trying to prove yourself. So when you take the lead, you just go into hero mode and sort of forget about the gaps behind you. And it looked like they did that a little bit. I will, because I have seen some comments come through about those aero helmets. So I have had some viewers come back to me about a 4-watt power saving. So doesn't hurt, Get that aero helmet on, save 4 watts.
Every watt, right? I mean, Ineos or Team Sky have made many Tour de France victories out of this whole marginal gains idea, which is the idea that every 1% counts, that there's nothing that you would bother saying, it's not really worth it. Everything is worth it So 4 watts, I would definitely take that. That'll make some difference. Whether it makes the difference that you need, well, that remains to be seen, but it's certainly worth the effort. So we're looking at KC here. Looks like there's a little bit of a gap back to, oh no, he's been dropped, it looks like. So he's a bit adrift, 30 seconds adrift from his team. And he started this team, so he is responsible for getting this crew out there. So very big high five for that effort, because a lot of effort goes into all of the team managers out there who certainly herd all the riders together and get them on the platform. So good on him. He's been cut adrift a bit, but good on him for getting that crew together. We're looking at CRT. Now, we've got 5 riders. They're looking pretty good. They're actually rolling pretty good turns. Anna, we've talked about whether short turns are better or longer turns. We haven't yet tonight seen a team that has very clearly executed either strategy. We've had a bit more blobbing going on and a few more individual riders taking control of the pace. But perhaps as we get into
that was messy.
Relentless and APAC, we might see a little bit more smooth. But this is tough. So they're going up the volcano here. There's some little pinches, and they need to be really careful, because the smallest acceleration up a climb when you're feeling good versus somebody who's on the limit is not pretty. And this little turnaround to the left is also a little bit of a tough one. Now, we need to bear in mind that when they go over the top here, the drop down and the descent, it's not a big enough descent that you can get into a power tuck. So nobody can actually take a big breather down there. You actually really have to pedal down there. And then you get onto the gravel section. And that can be challenging. We've talked about why, in terms of lack of visibility and also just how much harder it is. So this can be a really critical time to make sure they look after each other.
Yeah, if you're watching, one thing to really keep an eye on is those watts per kg on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see. So the reason I sort of said before it was a little bit messy is because you can see at the moment you've got Tyler King leading about 6 watts. The crucial thing to look at is when Tyler drops off, when the pace of the next rider comes up. And what we saw before is the next rider came through. You can just sort of see it happening again now. The next rider's coming through nowhere near that sort of 6 watt that Tyler King was holding. And it just slows the speed down. And that's sort of not what you want. You want that next rider to come through at a similar sort of nice wattage, keep that pace high, and really don't drop the speed. So, you know, if you're watching from home and wanting some tips for your own team, or sort of wondering what this is all about, is those are good little numbers to keep an eye on. And that's where you see the really good teams, as the transitions are just buttery smooth. As we watch Zed Sun here, there's a rider just dropping off the back there, but it looks like they've caught up. We've got that full aero setup riding on the front. I think that's, can't quite see their name, from Smoother Zed Sun. I'm not sure if that was a Zed Sun team I was keeping an eye on, but Strachan here, they're riding around that 44k an hour mark. Looks like they just rode past a rider from another team, but they're looking all right. They're not in that sort of single file format, which is what we want to see out of the team time trial. That's the sort of best teams you see. If you want to look at the Prem Division and the Canyon Esport or Hino, that's what they look like. This team's, bunched up a little bit more, but they are catching up to CRT, and we might just stay with this vision and look at them execute the pass, see if there's any drama, or if all the passes have looked pretty good tonight, I'd say, Katie.
Well, I mean, I must say I had to have a giggle when you said buttery smooth. You make it sound almost quite romantic. And team's time trials are anything but that. I mean, your lungs are on fire and your legs are on fire. And it is absolutely a mental game where so many times during a team's time trial, you say, I can't do this anymore. And then it's almost giving yourself a pep talk. No, I've got this. No, I can't do this anymore. No, I've got this. And I think there's probably only 1% of riders out there who are comfortable and really happy and backing themselves. It is quite an art to get a smooth transition between each turn with a team. Each week they have been getting better, but it does take a lot of practice. And I think that we're kind of getting to see a lot of the practice happening. And that's pretty cool that we're through this community league, we're really living through the execution of these new strategies, and we're watching them develop and grow, not only as individuals, but as teams. And I definitely will say that I love seeing teams that are willing to fail in order to succeed. So teams who go out too hard and mushroom cloud and blow up, I say good on them for giving it a go. Because I think you don't know if you never know. And if you're always just really conservative in your approach, there's not a lot of marginal gains in being quite conservative. So we've got Cryogen Super Banieres, which is a beautiful climb in France. It has featured in the Tour de France many times, as all of the Cryogen teams are named after mountains. And they are a bit of a dog's breakfast, Anna. They are all over the shop.
Yeah, they're not looking super strong. I do want to just note a comment that I've seen come through that apparently the Evo Savages have fielded a ridiculously good-looking team this week. So I don't know if that's good power-wise or just good-looking. So Ben, maybe go back to that one. But they've fielded a ridiculously good-looking team this week, and the battle league positions for 4, 5, and 6 is very close. So that could be one to watch. And we're seeing here the Evo team looking very good in that pink, almost what's that old Tour de France team, Lampre? I remember they had a beautiful pink kit.
Yes,
it looks great in their team time trial.
To the old Lampre kit.
Yeah,
good pick. Especially for a triathlete, not to rib you too much on that, but you're probably busy riding around with invisible socks on and aero helmet.
I actually got hassled the other day for how long my socks were. So I've almost gone other side of cycling. I'm just wearing socks that are too long. So who knows?
Sock length is a big thing in the Australian cycling scene as to legitimacy.
This
I don't often silence you, Anna, but I love it when I do.
It doesn't happen often, Katie. So one to you. I think you're getting me back from last week.
All right. Look, we're looking at Team ZWC. This is the team, one of the teams to beat tonight. So Team ZWC Attack, Relentless, and DPAC are the 3 to watch. I want to note that at that intermediate sprint, Team ZWC went through that 8K split in 9:54. The winner of the Prem League in this race was Canyon Esports. They went through in 9:56. You're picking up what I'm putting down. That is 2 seconds faster by Team ZWC Attack on the start. By the second split, they were only 2 seconds different to Canyon Esports. They are absolutely rocketing along. This is the best performance we've seen to date for this team. They're doing an overtake at the moment. I hope it doesn't get too messy. Evo need to just respect them and get out of the way. They're doing a really good job doing that. There's a bit of an art to the overtake and making sure your team stays together, and also the team being overtaken is able to stay together. So ZWC, Anna, they are absolutely throwing everything out there tonight.
Oh, they sure are. I mean, I don't think they would have felt good about Relentless beating them last week, even though it was only 12 seconds, and they are out here and they are throwing it down. I mean, here we have it. Here's got Relentless. So we've got Yama here, who was a little bit of a controversial addition to the team. I think taken off another team, but this is Relentless, and I don't see any technical issues here. So it looks like they might have a full suite of riders, but they are getting a bit caught up in DPAC just behind. But I can see Lindsay from DPAC there. So they've come through DPAC. That is phenomenal. So Relentless and ZWC, this is amazing racing at the top end of this men's APAC Div 1. And it looks like we've got the full suite of Relentless. You've got Yama, Cantanazaro, Grasicki, Duffy Jr., one of your faves, and they Ottstot as well. I'm not sure I've seen Ottstot before, so I'll see if I can pull up some stats there. But there might be some words here soon, because DPAC is not backing off as much as you would want. Lindsay has pulled up the pace and is getting definite draft benefit there from the Relentless team, so he's really going to have to pull back. So there's not words as they ride through another team, the PNX team. So Relentless, to their name, is being absolutely relentless on this course, led out by Cantanazaro.
They are on a good one. So they've got Otstot, Balaj Galambos is also out there. We haven't seen a lot of him, but he's got some pretty good numbers. Brian Duffy Jr., we know he's a triathlete, and he's got quite a lot of punch as well. He'll need to be careful in the team's time trial when he comes through to the front that he doesn't accelerate too much and open a gap, because that is something that can really easily happen for riders who are a bit punchier and almost don't realise their strength. We're watching Drew Ginn on screen at the moment. He's one of the Aussie heroes of rowing, an Olympic gold medalist, and rather famous in Australia. He's been in a few TV ads that have made him a bit of a household name. He's an absolute monster on the bike. I tell you what, if he had have chosen cycling over rowing, I think he would have had an equally as gold-filled, successful Olympic career. So it's great to see him spending a lot of time on the bike now. And I think that cycling has given him a whole new community after he retired from rowing. I love that. I love the different stories that come out of this, and a lot of the athletes who turn to cycling to be part of something and part of a community. So very good to see him. He is the kind of rider who can go all day. So he's what I would call a diesel. You know, he doesn't really slow down, but he doesn't necessarily have a lot of punch either. So if I see little gaps opening up to Drew, it doesn't worry me, because I know that he will be able to just motor back on bit by bit. And he's not the kind of rider that it would bother too much. So they're looking pretty neat out there at the moment, I must say. They're a bit blobby rather than a strung out line, but there's pretty high powers. I mean, look at Drew Ginn. He's over 400 watts. So we're back to Relentless now. Grosicki, he's a rider that has performed week in and week out. They're moving fast, and they are looking as that strung out line rather than the blob. This is what we've been kind of waiting to see, Anna. We've been talking about how to perfectly execute a team's time trial. We are seeing it in action here.
Oh, this is an education. I've just had a little bit of a look at some stats on Otstot. So an ex-pro triathlete turned Zwift racer and a proud team member of Team Relentless. So just like you were saying before, it comes from a different code, but now a proud Zwift racer. And he was pushing off the front at 7 watts a kg. They're holding some insane power and some insane pace. So this team going up against ZWC APAC, I mean, this is game on. We can see there at the 22K split, though, ZWC 27-12, Relentless 27-29. Oh, so I don't know what's going to happen on the finish line, but it looks like ZWC may have taken back the TTT crown from Relentless in this week's racing. I do want to quickly mention as well, though, the tight race that we have between Evo Savages and the Aero team we had on screen before. There's only 1 point separating them, 4th and 5th. Last week, Aero beat Evo, but Evo's sitting higher on the placings. So that's another little sort of battle within the race happening tonight.
It's kind of a race within a race. I love that. I must say I am so super impressed that Team ZWC APAC, yes, they're on the top of the table, only 3 points ahead of Relentless. That's certainly not an unassailable lead. But their time tonight is blowing my mind, blistering. I mean, they are currently not too far off the time that Canyon won the Prem League in. They went through split 3 in 26:59. So Relentless not too far behind. The mostly Japanese crew here, I think it's really a combination of them just working so well together. Earlier, Anna, we talked about different kinds of teams and how they might succeed. We thought that for the most part, a team with 3 riders who are strong and 3 who trail behind a bit is not nearly as efficient and as fast as a team with 6 fairly even riders. We're kind of seeing that in action with Team ZWC, but we're looking at Relentless now. They continue to be very neat and very well executed. Tiny little gaps are opening up, but they don't last for very long, and it's fairly controlled in the way they want to do it. Grosicki, I want to make sure that when he swings off, he doesn't actually take an opportunity to freewheel. We can see a little gap opening up at the back there. And they always say your effort, Anna, is not over until you're back on the group. So you don't swing off and take a breather. You don't take that breather until you're actually on the back of the group. So Relentless looking quite good here, quite neat. We expected that. we've kind of been waiting, haven't we, for a team to look a bit textbook for us. They are 17 seconds adrift. Look at me with my elementary maths. 17 seconds adrift of Team ZWC Attack, but they are looking very neat.
Yeah, it looks like the gap between ZWC and Relentless grew over the race. So it started off at only 6 seconds between the two of them, then 10 seconds, and then, like you said, 17. So I think ZWC may take it out tonight over Relentless, which will be very interesting as far as the overall standings go, because it's a tight race at the top, 3 points between them. There could be 4, but who knows what's going to happen in the next couple of races. As we just watch Aero cross the line back to Relentless here. Looks like they have dropped off a rider off the back just as they're coming to the end. That's Cantanazaro, who they ejected near the end, and DPAC here with McKay, Lindsay. They got passed actually by Relentless during the race, so they are still sitting probably around third place. Won't see much of a change in their standings. They're third overall, and came third in the team time trial last week, so they're liking that bronze medal position at the moment. I don't know if they like it, but that's where they're there.
Well, they're consistent, if nothing else, so good on them for that. It's not a problem that Cantanazaro was dropped off the back there, because that is definitely a strength of that crew, is that they have been strategically very good. You want to finish with 4 riders. You don't need to finish with 5. And if the best way to do that is to use a rider up, then so be it. We don't get to see every meter of them pedaling, so we don't necessarily get to know what reason a rider might be getting dropped. But we can certainly know from past weeks that Cantanazaro has performed really well. Okay, we're looking now at the Div B here. Anna, we're looking at the TV team. This is not quite as neat as we've just seen in the A Div, but they do look to be ticking along pretty well at 44 kilometres an hour. We want to make sure no attacking there at the front, Parry, because you're putting a little bit
I think
too
they're right
much
near the
distance
end,
into your riders. Yes, you're right. They are right near the end, but they do still need to make sure that they finish. But so we've got MRRB here. They've got 6 of them. They're looking fairly civilised. They're moving pretty quick, 45k an hour coming up to the finish line. So a bit of a hot race happening here in the men's.
That poor guy
Div
without
B,
the yellow jersey on.
Yeah, what's going on there? Is that a bit? That's like he missed the memo there. He's the one that turned up to the Christmas party without his Christmas outfit on.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you just feel wouldn't really part of the team, would you, with 5 other yellow riders around you? But anyway.
Well, especially now that you've called him out.
I know. Not by name. I wasn't sure who it was, but next time wear your yellow jersey. Yes. This is an interesting one. 3 riders here to the Tune team. So it's not a great result, because that won't validate it if they haven't got their 4th rider. And I can't see anybody
this is
there.
Not ideal.
This does not look like a great finish.
For everybody to remember, you need to finish with 4, because the time is taken off the 4th rider. So they've finished, but the time won't actually stop for them until rider number 4 crosses the line. Now, if he's over it and has double-clicked, well, they're heck out of luck, because they're not going to end up finishing with the time. So Velo Club are absolutely flying here, and goodness, don't they look neat? Look at them. They're going 3 or 4k an hour faster than we've seen the other teams. They are very on trend here with their bike choice and their kit, so they're looking pretty fancy for that, and they're looking pretty neat, and they're moving along too. So high heart rate too there, finishing there, which is good. They've pushed themselves all the way to the line. Wonder Boy Randall, I like that name. So in the big ring, 49.2. They are also finishing with 4 and looking pretty neat. There's a whole lot of Tron bikes happening in this B division.
This is one of my favourite teams. Yeah, I talked a little bit about Hurt before. My husband's part of Dirt, so we've got a whole family of Zwift races, and Dirt I just love. Dad's inside riding trainers. They've got a great little kit there with a baby bottle instead of a drink bottle on the back of their jersey, and here we go, you can see it. Beautiful little baby bottle there, a little moustache and some glasses, and great for these guys to get out. It's full team of 6 there, so they'll have a little baby somewhere asleep in their house, and good job did.
Yeah, good on them. And I really hope they don't, when they go out IRL, they don't take the baby bottle over the bin, because that would be a little bit of a shock when they went for a drink, wouldn't it? We're looking at Vision APAC here. So, of course, we're looking at the APAC racing tonight. All the community leagues are worldwide, which is really cool, and in different time zones. We've talked about how Relentless get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to join the APAC League, which is great because it fits in around their busy schedules. As parents, having normal jobs, inverted commas, what is a normal job? But it's great to see so many people out here racing. So Vision APAC are finishing now. Sizakov leading them over the line. They had 5 riders. Cryogen here, they've got 4 riders. So thankfully, Anna, we've only seen one team cross with 3, and we hope the other rider made his way to the finish eventually.
Hopefully. Maybe they're still out there, having a bit of a latte out at the volcano.
Keep riding, buddy. It's a tough day. We've all been there.
Yeah.
But,
you can get there.
Go on, you can do this. Yeah.
No.
We had a bunch ride around this course this morning, and there are a few nastier points than you may realise. It does look dead flat, but around that volcano and certainly through the Italian villas with the gravel, it can be tough. So look at this, the big ring, 49 tooth here. They are getting caught up with the Aero. There's a bit of an overtake happening there, but they've got quite similar jerseys, so it kind of looked like they were all blobbing along, like maybe a little bit of confusion.
Exactly. All the purple jerseys in the women's race were getting a bit confused, and all the green jerseys in the men's race. AHDR blowflies. That's a bit of a different kit for AHDR. The blue kit, not the purple. And 5 riders. I always like seeing, more than just sort of the 4 at the end. It really shows a good team cohesiveness. And the cryogen. There's a lot of cryogen teams out that we've seen as well. That guy's finishing. Must have been dropped from a team earlier. Looks like he's just crossing the line on his own. And looks like
these are our warriors that are finishing on their own, Anna. These are the ones that maybe haven't had the best day, or maybe they've committed themselves and kind of been the sacrificial lamb. So for any of the sacrificial lambs who are kind of limping across the line, you've done an amazing job and well done. And also to the teams who've maybe tried something new, lost a few riders along the way as a result of it. I say also awesome effort to that. The AHDR kit here, this is the pretty normal kit we see on their weekly rides. So I think they've got so many teams out there that they do need to differentiate themselves somehow. So another big shout out to this community, because they've done an awful lot for the Australian esports cycling community. And this is the leading team in the C's at that 22K mark. They're around about 15 seconds ahead of the big ring 46 tooth. So, and now that I know what it stands for, Anna, I have to say it in full each time. So they're doing an overtake here, and a few gaps are opening up. They are pretty close to the finish, so it's absolutely not panic time for the chances. They've shown that they have pretty good form amongst them, and they are pretty cohesive unit. So this is pretty textbook what we're seeing here, where a few gaps open up, but then quite quickly they do wait for each other. This says to me that they're communicating really well via Discord, most likely.
Bane caught up to Katie there, is it? And as soon as he got on his wheel, he put in a little dig at about 7 watts a kg, a little sprint, and gapped him again. So not sure what he was playing at there, but they have come back together.
He's got his aero helmet on. He's got his disc wheel on. He wants to make sure he's kind of maintaining his pecking order. Perhaps there's a little bit of that going on, but the chances are leading the split times at the moment in the C div, and we do expect them to come over the line for the win. So if we know from the kilometres that they're only about a K away from the finish again, it's about the 28K mark, because it's 25.5 K course, but there is 2.5K lead in from when they let go out of that pen. So they want to finish with 4. If they finish with any less, then they are in trouble. So they are going to cross the finish line soon. They have been pretty consistent again, week in and week out. Over the series, across the whole community, Anna, I would say in all of the different geographical locations. We've really seen some teams emerge that we know will be able to step up to the next division. And certainly in the A's, we're seeing a bit of an evolution of who could step up to Prem. And based on the times tonight, I think ZWC are ready to step up to that Premier League and not just be a number there, but certainly be very competitive. And I think the chances might be looking to step up a division here as well.
Yeah, and I have seen some comments coming through that ZWC is made up of mostly elite Japanese cyclists. So obviously they've got the power behind them and they can race extremely well. So yeah, it'll be good to see how they go against Premier. I mean, I think you said that they performed very well even against Canyon Esport that took out the men's Prem. So ZWC would be great, coming from APAC region, seeing them, gun it with the big boys.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing the overall times, but based on the split times, they actually started faster than Canyon Esports. And in the next two splits, they were only, less than 10 seconds adrift. No matter what, that's really impressive because when we're looking at teams winning their community leagues and stepping up, a lot of the time we're thinking they'll step up, but maybe they won't make a big impact. But we now know that the real quality level of racing in these community leagues means that they'll step up, and some of the Prem League teams kind of need to be shaken in their boots. I mean, I think that they need to be watching quite carefully.
Yeah, well, I think what's happened over this whole league, we're getting to the pointy end is these teams that started off a bit sort of haphazard and threw together some friends and, jumped into new teams. Now they've raced together for, 7 weeks now. They're just performing well. They are at that level of the high-performing elite Zwifters who've been racing together for years. So I think it just shows you that the more time you can race together, the better you know each other, the better you know strengths and weaknesses, the more high-performing you can be.
Absolutely. And I think we'll see a little bit more poaching go on as well from different teams, from different riders. So let's take a look at the women's results, if we can get those up and see how that came out in the wash. A bit of a surprise day, all in all, because a few different start lists. So we had the Aero Flyers take the win there, 5.97 seconds ahead of Zed Sun, who are in second. The Devil Kittens in third, 45 seconds back. Probably the surprise of the day was the Ace of Cakes in fourth, a minute 17 back. But they did exceptionally well with a young rider thrown in there for a new combination. The Fluffy Buns in fifth on 2:27 back. The Bombshells, 2 minutes 53 adrift. And Cryogen Valletta taking out seventh spot, 6 minutes and 34 adrift there. So not too many surprises, but some pretty impressive performances. The Div C, Anna?
Yeah, BRT Fiery Kittens took it out over TBR Smile On. So that was an amazing result from the BRT team. Third place, HDR We Out the Cake. Fourth, the Caffeines. A lot of HDL there. Fifth, Spin Mafia. Sixth, Cruzettes. Seventh, Comets. Eighth was CMA Queen Bees. Ninth, Evo Flux One. And 10th, another AHDRL team, the Donuts.
The Donuts, that's a good team name. A lot of these team names, I feel like they've been quite creative. I hope that they keep them up overall. Okay, let's look at the overall team league standings. AHDRL, Ace of Cakes. Whoa, look at this. It's only a 2-point margin now.
2 points
over the Aero Flyers. So that was good of them to be able to hold on that today, but certainly makes the next 2 weeks very interesting. In third, Zed Sun on 143 points, but the race is really on with BRT Devil Kittens for that third place on the podium. The Bombshells in fifth on 118 points. Fluffy Buns, 113 points. In seventh, the Hellfire Kittens on 90 points. And Cryogen Valletta on 67 points in eighth. So let's take a look at Div C, Anna.
Yeah, so we had a even on points at the top, but after tonight now, TBR Smile On 153, AHDRL We Ate the Cates 152, BRT Fiery Kittens into third 151. That is very tight at the top of that C division. 1 point between each. That's going to be very good to watch over the next couple of weeks. AHDRL Caffeines in fourth, the Comets in fifth, Spin Mafia in sixth, Cruzettes in seventh, Evo Flux One in eighth, CMA Queen Bee in ninth, and Herd of Echidnas rounding out in 10th.
All right, we'll see the men's in a second when we can. But the women's, now that's interesting. We did not expect what happened there with the Ace of Cakes, but it does kind of go to show that anything can happen. We say unassailable lead, but riders get sick, different things happen. They start with different lineups. I actually think it's really impressive that they managed to have a junior rider there, McMaster, and not just finishing fourth because, that would have been a bit disappointing for them, I think, in the general scheme of things. But what impressed me was that they looked after their junior. So they got to the line
Yeah.
all together. Every time a gap opened up, they slowed down and they looked after her. That, I think, is really, strategically very good, but it's also really in the spirit of the community league.
Oh, I think so. This is a community league. It's a young rider, under 20. You want to look after her. She was a C category rider, riding in A's. It's not going to be a great experience if they drop her within the first 10 seconds. So I love the way they rode that. They're still leading. They've got 2 points up their sleeve, 2 more races to go. It's going to be tight between them and Aero, but that's what makes it exciting. I want it tight at the top.
Yeah, exactly. So still a very big race on, certainly in the women's A div and also in the C. Let's take a look at the men's results because some mind-blowing times and splits from ZWC there to take it out. But let's look at the results here. So ZWC attack 5.5 watts per kilo average. That's pretty solid.
Jeez.
34 minutes, 17 seconds. That's only 17 seconds adrift from the winner in the Prem League. And it would have gotten them third spot. So that's very, very impressive. Relentless,
Wow.
only 8 seconds back. They would have also been very competitive in the Prem League. In third, DPAC. In fourth, we have the Aero Masters. In fifth, Evo Savages, a minute 39 back. Wes 2 in sixth, Team ZWC Blast. So that is the other team they have out there, 2 minutes and 8 seconds back. Smoother Z Sun, I like that name, 2:12 back. In 8th spot, Cryogen Super Banyeres. In 9th, 2 minutes 16 back. R3R Bowie, goodness me, it sounds like a Star Wars name there. In 10th spot there, 3 minutes and 19 seconds back. So let's take a look at the Bs, Anna.
And the Bs, we had the Big Ring 50 Tooth, winning at average 4 watts a kg. That was lower than the next two, Aero Force and Z Sundries. They were a minute back there. Cryogen Etnas, Dirty Sprockets in 5th, the Evo Barbarians in 6th, Vision APAC 7th, MRRB in 8th, the Velo Club Melo Sabla, presented by Cycling Tips, in 9th, and AHDR Blowflies rounding out in 10th, 2 minutes 24 off the pace. Pretty tight field, actually.
It's all of the divisions are turning pretty tight, aren't they? Let's take a look at the Div C with the chances on the top there. We saw them come in. They looked very neat. The Big Ring 46 Tooth in second, MRRC a minute back in third. The Choppers in fourth. That's a very Aussie name. In fifth, TT1 Carbos. Sixth, Cryogen Alto de Latras. In seventh, Cryogen Altide. The Chargers in eighth. The Big Ring 47 Tooth. In ninth, Cryogen Mount Hotham. That's a nasty climb, that one. Taking out 10th spot, 9 minutes and 20 seconds back. So let's look at the standings overall. Anna, Team ZWC attack. Whoa, there's only 4 points in it to Relentless.
Oh, that's going to be such a good one to watch over the next coming weeks. That's a gap that Relentless would not have wanted after tonight, but ZWC, hands down, one of the best performances in that team time trial. That was absolutely smoking. DPAC coming in third place. So it looks like they've sort of cemented their position in third, a bit behind second, but well ahead of fourth, Aero Masters. With equal there, fourth and fifth, Aero Masters and Evo Savages, another little battle to watch. World Elite Zwifters, number 2 and 6, Team ZWC Blast in 7th, WTRL Pioneers in 8th, TBR 54 in 9th, and Smoother Z Sun in 10th.
All right, let's take a look at the Div B. We've got the Big Ring 52, 3 points ahead of Aero Force. So again, really tight at the top of all of these tables. Make sure the next 2 weeks, it's a 10-week series, and we are in week 8. Are going to be very exciting. In third, we've got Evo Barbarians on 138 points adrift. So pretty much the top two are sorted out, but which order remains to be seen. In fourth, Cryogen Etna. In fifth, the Dirty Sprockets. In sixth spot, Vision APAC on 110 points. The Blowflies on 109 points. There's another little race there for fifth spot. In eighth, Z Sundries on 95 points. The ZHQ Ravens on 87 points. In ninth spot there. And the Velo Club Mayo Sables, presented by Cycling Tips, longest team name in the league. They are in 10th on 84 points. All right, let's go to the C's, Anna.
Team C, so AHDR Chances 154 with TBR 46T 150. In third place, TT1 Carbos. Fourth, the AHDR Choppers. Fifth, Cryogen Altide. Sixth, MMRC. Oh, equal to Cryogen, and so fifth and sixth, tight racing there. Seventh, Cryogen Alto de Letras. Eighth, TBR 4070. Ninth, AHDR Chargers. And 10th, Cryogen Mount Hotham.
All right, we've got some pretty tight races ahead, Anna. We've got 2 weeks left in this league. The Premier League, they did finish this week, but the Community League still have another point scratch race to come, and then finishing off with a team's time trial just before Christmas. Who can get a Christmas present and move up to the Premier League? I think that's on a lot of the riders' minds.
Exactly. And next week, my favourite course on Zwift, my favourite race course going around Yorkshire. That's going to be absolute fireworks. I can't wait for it with all these tight finishes. And a reminder too, we've got the Nations race coming up soon. So you can represent your country. That'll be great. I can't wait to see all those jerseys out there in game. Me, the black silver fern, and I guess you, the green and gold, Katie.
Yeah, I'll be in the green and gold. So the top 22 nations by subscription, they will have their chance to ride for their nation next Saturday and Sunday, so the 5th and 6th of December, because, of course, on the 9th of December is the first ever UCI World Championship eSport race right here on Zwift, which is super exciting. The winner will get an eSports World Championship rainbow jersey, both in-game and also in real life. Now, the regulations say that they can only wear it in esports racing, but I'm fairly sure for anybody who's taking away that esports rainbow jersey that they'd be wearing it on any coffee ride they possibly can, because you may as well. If you've got one and you've earned it, you may as well ride in it. Anna, thank you so much for joining us this week. We've got some incredible racing that has been happening. Good luck tomorrow. You're out there once again. You had a cracking race last week. You finished in second. So, look, no pressure, Anna. But I'm expecting a win tomorrow. Do you think you could do that?
Oh, yeah, we'll show up. We'll show up to win. We want to move to the top of the table. We'll be there.
Excellent. A win for the commentary team. All right. Well, thanks to everybody who's joined us tonight. Make sure you jump on your bike this weekend and support your nation in that Nations Cup. And we'll see you next week.